Okay, so for this lesson, we're going to look at the basic construction of an if statement. And we're going to see two variants for this if statement. The one that has an if-then-else structure, and the other one will have simply an if without the else. Okay, so we're going to write a simple program here to show the code. And then the next lesson, we will focus on the flowchart, plus we will review the code as well. So here, we're just going to delve right into the code to show how an if statement is written up. So what is an if statement? An if statement allows you to branch. Okay, branching means now you're no longer running sequential code, top to bottom. So that means you're going to encounter a situation where you're going to either go to the right or to the left. We're going to see that in the flowcharts. Or basically, you're going to encounter a question that you need to answer, or your program needs to answer with a true or false. It's that simple. So there's no maybe or anything like that. So basically, the answer is either true, do this, false, do that. Okay? So let's do something like this. So let's say we have int a equals 3. So we have a value for the variable a, 3. And then we're going to ask the system, is a greater or equal to 3, do something, else do something else. All right, so here's how you write that statement. And then between these parentheses, you write the actual condition. And the condition is the logical expression that you're going to need to evaluate to get a Boolean result of either true or false. So what would that be? An example like this would be, is a greater or equal to 3? Okay, so that is here an operator right here, greater or equal. We're asking, so if a is actually greater or equal, we know it is because a is 3. But anyway, so if it is, what are you going to do? That's the then part. So what I need you to do, if it's a single statement, you can actually just write it right under it. And that's the true part. If it's true, do this. Printf. A is greater or equal to 3. So, which means it's true. So /n. Else. So now we have branching. If it's false, what do? Then printf. Notice the tabbing here that I'm doing, okay? All right, so this tabbing, it's optional, but it's good for clarity. This means this statement is part of the true part of the if statement. This statement here that I'm completing right now is part of the false part of the if statement. A is less than, okay, we're going to write this like this. A is less than 3. Okay, so it's not equal to, and let me put a /n here to give me a new line so we don't have the press any key to continue next to it. Let's run this. So this is the basic construct of an if-then-else statement. Now you can say, you mentioned if, then, else. Where's the key word then? Then is silent. If, then do this, else do this. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and compile and run. In other languages, you may have to write the keyword then, not in C. So compile and run, and notice A is greater or equal to 3. Okay? Now, let me change the value of 3 to something like maybe 1. So we know that this statement will yield a false, which means this line here will not execute. This here will execute. Well, let's prove that. So compile and run. And sure enough, A is less than 3. So this is the basic format on how to use an if-then-else statement. Now, let's do another example where we're going to do, so this here is the if-then-else statement. Okay, so now we're going to do simply one that has simply if and no else. it can happen. So we could do something like this. So if without the else. Okay, so there are situations where we're going to need that. We have lessons in front of us where we're going to do a lot of examples where we're going to do if then else, if without the else, if within an if, right? Nested if statements, etc. All right, so let's focus on this one. If, let's say A is greater than 0, or greater or equal to 0, for example, then we'll simply say printf A is positive. Okay? All right, well, let's run this program. Let's see how this behaves. So compile and run. So A is less than 3, but A is still positive. Why? Because it's 1, right? All right, well, let's give it another value. Let's give it a value of 0. Well, 0 is considered positive, so here you go. A is less than 3, A is still positive, right? So let's go ahead and give it a value of -3. And let's see what happens. Compile and run. Notice now we only see A is less than 3, fine, but we're not seeing any message that says if it's positive or negative. That is because that logic is handled by the second if statement where it does not have an else statement, all right? So it only handles when cases where A is simply positive or A is greater or equal to 0. Anytime A is negative, it doesn't have to do anything, okay? So this is an example, okay? So you could rework it any way you want. So as soon as this lecture is done, redo this, right? So the code will be provided and redo this example any way you want just to mess around with an if then else statement. Okay, I will see you for the next lesson.